I have a motion. It's been seconded. I failed to hit the record button until just now for the record. That's generally not much different than sitting at the town hall at some of these meetings sometimes with the technology, but we hit the record button because it's very important that this is recorded. But of course, we're taking minutes as well. So far we've approved the minutes of March 2nd, the 4th, the 16th, and the regular meeting of the 4th. And this is the consent calendar. We have a motion. It's been seconded. Any further comment? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, the first item under old business is the only item under old business. It's to direct the Board of Finance to approve the budget and set the mill rate. As you know, one of the governor's executive orders laid out a different way of doing business in the 169 towns that make up Connecticut. Part of the struggle is town meetings and referendums. And so the governor does have put out an order. It is a requirement. It is a shall, not you may, and we will abide by those executive orders. And it's our duty to, as the selectmen, to instruct the Board of Finance to deliberate as they would and do their due diligence and set a budget and thus set a mill rate, dependent upon the revenues of the town and the assessments, etc. So we have a motion prepared. Now maybe we should do that, and we could put that on the table and have discussion.
Okay, in adherence to the governor's executive order 7I, paragraph 13, the Board of Selectmen authorizes the budget-making authority in East Lyme, namely the Board of Finance, to adopt a budget for the July 1st, 2020 to June 30, 2021 fiscal year, and to set a sufficient mill rate without holding votes at a town meeting and without complying with the annual town referendum requirement. The Board of Finance shall comply with the public meeting requirements consistent with the requirements set forth in Governor's Executive Order 7B, and shall take all reasonable steps to publicize the draft municipal budget for said fiscal year and to receive public comment via email or other means.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Are there any questions or is there any comments?
Yes. Was the Board of Finance able to finish all of its meetings with the various budgeted departments?
They have, it's a good question, Roseanne. They haven't started the process yet. We've had many meetings with the town attorney, but with the chair of the Board of Finance, and then ultimately with the Board of Finance. We're putting off the deliberation process for as long as possible so that we can have a better understanding of what the COVID-19 crisis, how it will affect business for the remainder of this year, but namely for fiscal year 2021. And then also, to get a better handle or as accurate as possible. I'm not sure we're ever going to know this until it happens, but what the revenue side will be. And so they are going to start the deliberation, I believe, on the 5th of May with the Board of Ed, the 7th and the 11th of May with all town departments. And then they are through their deliberations and posting of the budget through this process. They will post the budget on the town website, solicit comments from the public, and the whole process will be done. And they will set the mill rate on the very same day they intended to, which I believe is May 27th, Wednesday. Okay. So
I thought that they had been able to follow part of their original schedule, and that they were able to see some of the department representatives. Okay, well, that clarifies that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, they haven't done anything yet. We got close to it, and we pulled back on purpose to see what this is going to be like. I have more information on that in my selectmen's report about our need to cut the budget, and we will talk about that.
Okay.
There you go. Any other questions, comments? Dan, that's you making all that noise.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. Okay.
You have to stay steady and out of a wind tunnel. Um, Thank you.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. We made a motion. New business, the hazard mitigation plan. Victor Benny is here. I've unmuted you, Victor. Thanks for joining us tonight. We put you high on the agenda so you could go back to your family, but we appreciate you being here. Is this something we do every year?
Yes. If you want me to, you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right. Good. So this annual report is every year. It's part of it's required by our hazard mitigation plan. The hazard mitigation plan was prepared by Malone and McBroom. The plan is a 5-year plan and was adopted by the Board of Selectmen on February 21st, 2018. The purpose of the hazard mitigation plan is to provide an update to the assessments provided in the previous hazard mitigation plan and to evaluate and prioritize natural hazard mitigation projects. The hazards covered by the plan include inland flooding, coastal flooding and shoreline change, hurricanes and tropical storms, winter storms and nor'easters, earthquakes, wildfires, and dam failure. The plan includes a mitigation strategies and action section for each of the natural hazards. And that's basically what formulates the annual report. Those are the items that we put into the annual report. Another aspect of all this and why we especially need to make sure this annual report is completed is because as part of the National Flood Insurance Program, which we're a member of, the HMP, the Hazard Mitigation Plan, is a requirement of that. The NFIP provides federally backed flood insurance to the East Lyme property owners. Participating in the NFIP also provides the town with federal disaster assistance, which we're currently going to be taking advantage of through the COVID-19 pandemic. But in past situations with hurricanes Irene and Sandy, and some of the winter storms that came through, being Alfred, Nemo, and Juno, we've taken opportunities to take advantage of that grant program. The town of East Lyme is also one of only 13 active Connecticut communities that participates in the NFIP's community rating system. Basically, this is a program that goes above and beyond what the normal NFIP requirements are. And because of our rating as a Class 8 community, our homeowners that are required to pay flood insurance pay a 10% premium reduction on their flood insurance. So that all boils down to usually I take the opportunity at this point to say that we did complete the annual report. It's a 4-page report that again highlights those mitigation action strategies that are required to be covered for the year. And basically what we do with emergency management is we check in on each of the departments that play a part in this, whether it being land use, zoning, planning, the building department. There's also some input in this year's report from water and sewer department and also from public works and engineering. So at that, I won't get too deep into the actual report itself unless there are any questions. And I guess remind you, Mark, as you know, that the board is not required to make a decision or anything on this tonight. It's just something that's required that we review with the board.
Review and question, of course, given the circumstances and how we're playing this out on Zoom, it's much more difficult than having the mitigation plan in front of us and being able to visualize it and interact with you. But I will open it up to the selectmen for any questions that they might have. This is something we see every year. It does not require action, as Victor said, but you need to be made aware that this is happening. Any questions?
Yes, I do. I noticed, of course, that there are numbers that are missing. So are we to assume that those action items have been accomplished in under previous actions?
Right. They've either been accomplished or it's being that it's a 5-year plan, those other numbers would be upcoming for future years for review and action. So they've either been completed or they will be completed in the future years. I think it was this hazard mitigation plan was approved by your board in 2018. We're in 2020,
Yes.
so there's about another 2.5 years before the next report comes due. So there are some additional things that will be completed over the next 2.5 years.
Okay, so because I noticed also that there's no time frame here as to when each of these would plan to be accomplished. So, in other words, these are things that you're going to continue to work on for the next couple of years.
Right, exactly.
Okay, action number 14, relocating the wastewater pumping station in the Black Point area. I believe we saw that before on the previous report. Unfortunately, I didn't have that report at home with me. It seems to me that that would be something that would be quite an undertaking. And do you think that that's possible to accomplish in 2 years?
So you might want to, I think Joe Bergaw is at the meeting, Mark, if you want to unmute him, if he wants to contribute anything. But my recollection in talking to Brad about that one was that there was no direct plan to do anything for the Black Point pumping station, but that's why we included some of the other things. I guess the Water and Sewer Commission did take a little bit of a different approach on some of the improvements they were doing, and the report that they had completed did highlight the Niantic pump station and the Patagonia pump stations. And I think that's where the work is going into for this round of work.
I see. All right, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Terrific. Any other questions? Thank you, Victor. A whole lot of work goes into this, and I know you've done it before, so maybe there's a little bit of plug and play involved, but I know you spend hours and hours on this and updating it every year. So we do appreciate you dropping by tonight and explaining it to us and all the work you do for us down in engineering.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Your excuse.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It's all right. Next up is tax collector John McCullough. You figured out the Zoom thing.
Yes, just about 15 minutes before it got on. Yes.
Now,
Thanks
thanks
to my wife.
Did your kid do it for you? Did you actually learn how to do it?
He helped. He did help a little bit.
There's no big deal for the under, I don't know, the 12-year-olds.
Nothing to it. Yeah.
Great. So we do have something that's very important that we have to go through. I've been working with John, and John's been working very hard with our supplier, and Walsh, the Walsh Group, who would put all our tax bills together and all that. And there is something that this is another executive order that came out by the governor that said towns must choose one of the two options. And let me see if I have it in front of me. One of the two options. And one of the two options for taxes this year, option one is a deferment, which means you could defer your owed taxes between a date in March. Was it March 20th, John?
This is for current taxes. That's to apply to current taxes. I guess our issue has to do with July 1st taxes.
Well, really. it's from March something to
June to June.
July 1st, isn't it?
Right.
Right, which would include next year's tax bill.
That would probably affect the water and sewer more than me right now.
Okay, but any bills that would be due, you're right, it wouldn't do much, but ultimately this affects next year's fiscal tax bills that are coming out.
Yes, that's
and
great.
It's up to this body, the Board of Selectmen. I'm getting an echo on, I think on Roseanne's phone. If we could be careful of that. I'm sorry, the echo's killing me. So we have two choices: a deferment, which means you can defer your taxes if you apply for this for up to 90 days, or we can hold off the due date of all taxes. No, the second option is a low interest tax option, which
That's
is the
correct.
taxes would be due on July 1st for everybody.
Right.
But if you couldn't pay it, you get charged 0.25% of interest per month.
Instead of 1.5% per month.
There's a lot of feedback.
Yeah, but Roseanne, I think you're echoing, Roseanne.
All right.
Were you trying to do something funny there?
No,
Yeah.
I can call back in using my cell phone.
Okay.
Did this echo just start?
Sort of, yes.
Well, I don't know why. I haven't changed position. All right.
I can mute you and then unmute you and ask if you have any questions.
Okay.
Let me just do that. I've been wanting to mute.
And
Roseanne.
Mark, could you, Mark, also unmute Paul?
Paul, how did he get muted?
His dogs are barking.
Oh, so I have to unmute him.
There you go.
Okay, Paul, you're back on.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. So there's two, I have papers everywhere. There's two options. Option A is a deferment, which I am going to recommend. It's what most communities, not all, but most communities are doing in our COG.
Correct.
And that means you can, if with an application, and it could be a simple application, and all it is an attestment that yes, I want to defer my taxes because of economic strife, economic concerns. And people would be able to defer their taxes for 90 days. And they do that at the tax office.
Right.
Otherwise, taxes would be due on July 1st and same as always.
Right.
The other option is to provide a low interest rate that the taxes would be due on July 1st, but you would, if you put it off up to 90 days, you'd be charged 0.25% a month, or the equivalent of an annual 3% a year.
And that would affect all grand lists, Mark, all delinquent grand lists going back to 2004.
Correct.
So the reason I think option 2 is a bad idea is because people that owe tens of thousands of dollars in delinquent interest would be getting away with murder.
Well, yes, maybe. I don't know that I heard it that way. Maybe it's being interpreted that way at your levels.
Well, the thing is, we would lose out on a huge amount of money that's owed to the town.
So the deferment option A is what's being suggested.
Yes.
And I will open it up for questions. I'm going to unmute Roseanne.
So,
No, I'm all set.
Okay.
Yep, a couple questions.
Yes.
It's hard to read this on it didn't scan too well, but so do you have to prove a hardship, or is it just open to anyone?
I believe it's open to anyone.
Well, the interpretation there in the executive order is if you apply and you claim a hardship. And it's been the general practice from other towns to say, you know what, we're going to put the application out there. If someone wants to apply, there will be no review process. We will grant them that. And there's a, part of the questionnaire, part of the application that we're proposing says, I'm aware of the amount and the basis of the tax. I understand this is basically it's they swear that there's economic conditions that would benefit them to delay their taxes for 90 days. If someone's stepping up and saying that, we're going to let them do it.
But option A, as written on here, says it has to be attest to or document significant economic impact by COVID-19 and/or that they're providing relief to those who have been impacted by COVID-19 pandemic.
Right, in the, correct. But we're suggesting that there is not a review process, that if they are suggesting that there is that kind of economic condition, that we will go ahead and give them their 90 days.
Okay.
Because, we would spend a year and a half trying to figure out, well, what level is, what's their annual income and how much of their taxes and why can't they do it? And, well, the wife still is working and all that. So it'd be too much for us to make that determination and create a commission or a board to come up with the answers to that. I'm going to suggest that if people are so inclined and they need to, they will submit an application and go through that process.
Do we have a date that they need to apply by, or could they apply by July 1st? I mean, they can't apply after it's due, right? Or can they? Is it?
What do you think, John?
I would say by July 1st, absolutely. They should have the application in.
Okay. I mean, we say that bills are due on July 1st, but we don't assess a penalty until the 31st. I think this year up until—
Or actually August 3rd.
August 3rd because of the weekend.
Yes.
Shouldn't we kind of mirror that? Because if you say July 1st and people are getting their bills, they're opening up their envelopes, and then they notice the flyer that we'll put in, the insert that we'll put in their bills, it'll be too late. And all you'll do is have, there'll be just a negative situation. And we're trying to help people, not put them in an adversarial relationship with the town. We're trying to work with
Mark,
you.
would you, as a suggestion in the motion when we move it forward, or the resolution, put a date in which it must be submitted by, so that it's really clear.
I agree.
Yep, put that in there, Kevin. You have that. So let's say you said August 3rd.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
John, if I pay my bill on August 3rd, it's interest free, right?
Yes, that's correct.
The 4th, we'll start
back to normal.
On the 4th.
Yes.
I want to just make sure I'm clear on that. So
That's right.
up and through the end of the business on the 3rd, they need to submit their application.
Okay. I'll add something to the end of that when we move the resolution.
I think that's reasonable.
Mm.
I think we need to be reasonable here too.
I
One
wonder if
final-
we should,
Good.
pardon me, I wonder if we should make it a public notice just to get people's attention that this is an option they could use instead of stuffing them in the billing.
I want to stuff it in the billing anyway. I want to put it right with the tax bill.
Okay.
And they can send in that instead of the tax bill, instead of the check.
All right.
But we're not going to send a second billing out. We're going to have very clear instructions, and yes, a public notice, website instructions. We'll get out there and we'll make sure people understand the process once we've developed it.
Okay.
We don't want to be caught in the middle. We want to be crystal clear on this.
Right.
It's important. But I think it does need to be an insert in the tax bill as well.
Okay, if we're outsourcing though, I'm going to have to let them know that as well.
I know that, and that's become an issue.
Yes.
So I'll talk to you about that.
All right. Okay.
Just a quick question for Anna. I assume we have enough reserve to, if we get a significant portion of people pushing off their tax payments for 90 days?
Oh, I'll
unmute her.
Anna. Darn.
Did you unmute me?
You're unmuted.
I did.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things that this does not apply to is taxes that are banks and mortgage companies escrow.
Right.
So I requested information. So for this current fiscal year, we have 22.3 million that was due from banks, and 11.1 of that is like what the first amount was due. So when I look at the taxes that were collected in July and August of this year, because people have like to the first or the second day in August to pay the current levy taxes, and we collected $32.9 million, which was 33% of, the taxes that we budgeted. If you want to, so I think it's going to be a challenge at best. And I think it's all going to depend on, not everybody's going to opt to take, to defer payment of their taxes for the 90 days. So it will be a challenge, and I think it's going to depend greatly on the number of people that actually pay their taxes, during the month of July. Because you have to remember, in July, in the middle of the month, we have about $4 million that goes out for debt service payments.
Right.
So this isn't really a deferment of taxes. Just to be clear, what it's actually is extending the grace period in which on which the taxpayers have to make their first payment without interest.
Right.
A good way of putting it.
And then if, like, for example, if you don't pay your taxes by October 1st, on October 2nd, you would have to pay the interest that would have been due since, since the taxes were due on July 1st.
6%.
What was that, John?
That would be 6% against the principal.
6% is
Yeah.
large.
July, August, September, October,
Okay.
at 1.5% per month.
Okay. All right. So we would go back and we'll be very clear in our communication that, here's your tax bill. If you're not paying it now and you're going to pay it 89 days from now, if you wait till the 91st day, those taxes are going to go into an interest. You're going to owe interest, and you're going to go all the way back. It doesn't start on October 2nd.
Right.
Very good comment. Very good point. And I think a great majority of, I think that many people will not have that economic hardship. There's a lot of people working remotely, and I think in our town, a lot of people will be able to step up and pay their taxes. And those that do want to fill out an application for the economic hardship, it does ask why. It asks, what the situation is, and that you, again, swear that you are in this situation. So, and it'll be up to them to pay their taxes. So, Anna, if we got into a sticky situation, we do have that rainy day fund. We do have our that fund. Are we able to dip into that to make our cash reserves and make payroll and then pay it back as taxes come in?
Well, the way that typically the way that our unassigned fund balance works is it's the cumulative results of operations over time, and that really is part of our cash flow.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
I'll make
Wait, I'm gonna find Roseanne. Hey, Roseanne, any questions?
I'm all set.
Okay, just gonna keep on unmuting you and moving you back on. It's still echoing. Then
And I'm good with it. I read it over, and I agree with the concept of going with the deferment program.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Why don't we throw a motion out on the table?
Okay, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen of the Town of East Lyme adopts as follows. 1, during the period of March 10, 2020, the date that Governor Lamont declared a public health and civil preparedness emergency, through and including July 1, 2020, the Town of East Lyme shall participate in a deferment program and shall offer to eligible taxpayers, businesses, nonprofits, and residents a deferment by 90 days of any taxes on real property, personal property, or motor vehicles, sewer and assessments taxes from the time such taxes first became due and payable. 2, eligible taxpayers, businesses, nonprofits, and residents are those that attest to or document significant economic impact by COVID-19 and or those that document that they are providing relief to those significantly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The town shall consider that all taxpayers, businesses, nonprofits, and residents shall be eligible for the deferment program. And this is what I added. Such application for deferment shall be submitted to the East Lyme tax collector no later than close of business on August 3rd, 2020.
I will second that.
Motion and second, and I want to confirm with the selectmen, this is a very important program, and we are required to choose one or the other. But we will be crystal clear in our communication to the taxpayers. We'll use every form we can to get the word out. I see the press is here. Maybe they'll help us as we get a little closer. And this becomes more of a reality to people as the tax bills are going out. But we will make sure we're crystal clear in our insert and in our communication so that folks don't get behind on this as well. We want to work with people to get them out of their jam. There's going to be a lot of hurting people in our town. We want to be
Mark?
there. And Ann, I see your hands up.
Yes, I just wanted to point out, I was going through the documentation for this, and it states right in the documentation that the applications need to be submitted to the town by July 1st.
Good.
Okay, I'll amend my motion to take the last comment out, starting with such application.
You just need to change the date that they're due by.
Right.
Yeah,
You used August 3rd, but they're due by July 1st.
yeah, so the last sentence I gave, starting with such application for deferment, I'll change that to such application for deferment shall be submitted to the East Lyme tax collector no later than close of business on July 1st, 2020. That amendment.
I'll resecond. Mark, when or John, when do the bills go out?
Well, it depends. It depends if we outsource or if we do them in-house. I was hoping for mid-June, but we'll see what happens. I hope we can get them out by then.
Okay, so we will have to get the word out then if it's.
I'll check with that as well. There is some provisions for towns to be able to be a little bit more flexible with this. So, you know, tax bills are due on July 1st. This is due on July 1st, but we don't really start penalizing people until August 3rd. I mean, can the applications follow suit? I will get back to you on that. If it's possible, I'll bring it to you at the next meeting and we can make a quick amendment to this. But we'll stick with the motion as is. And if we can find some flexibility, I'd prefer that. I think there's going to be enough confusion and enough information floating out there that I don't want someone being late by a day and being forced into a very tough economic condition.
Right.
Any other
I agree.
All right, I'm unmuting Roseanne. You all set, Roseanne?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's like there was 12 votes because Roseanne was echoing. So the vote is 12-0. 0-0. Double zero. Thank you, John, for the work you've put into this, and Anna as well. Lots of interesting times we're dealing with, and I really appreciate this. Sometimes it's one thing to come up with a plan in house, but when we're getting orders from the state, it makes it difficult sometimes too to abide by their rules. So thank you, John.
Thank you all.
All right, I'm gonna get you back out, and next is
Mark, I think you have to go back to B.
You jumped over the bonding.
did I? Wow.
Yes, you did.
You're unmuted, Ann. I heard that. So the bond refunding, it's $13 million of refunding bonds. Anna, do you want to explain what we're doing here?
So as you know, from time to time when the opportunity presents itself, we go and refund previously issued bonds. So it's the town's way of refinancing our bonded debt to get lower interest rates. We started looking at this actually a little bit earlier this year, and then the COVID-19 situation presented itself. So we kind of it didn't make sense to go forward. At this point in time, the bond market as it relates to municipal bonds has started to improve. But this, what we're looking at refunding is, there's like two pieces of it. The second piece is what would be called an advance refunding, and the market hasn't quite corrected itself for that type of funding yet. So we're just looking to get this resolution adopted so that when the opportunity presents itself, we'll be ready to get ourselves out in the marketplace.
Okay, ready for the resolution, Mark?
Resolution, it's a rather lengthy one. Is there a short version that you could read?
I'll get through it here quick.
Okay.
Resolved, Section 1, not exceeding $13 million general obligation refunding bonds of the town of East Lyme, Connecticut, the town, may be issued in one or more series and in such principal amounts as the first selectman and the town treasurer shall determine to be in the best interest of the town for the purpose of achieving net present value savings and/or to restructure debt service payments. The refunding boards, I'm a little bit, there's a typo there. The refunding boards are hereby authorized to refund all or any portion of any one or more series of the town's outstanding general obligation bonds, the refunded bonds. The refunding bond shall be issued and sold either in a negotiated underwriting or a competitive offering, and at such time or times as the first selectman and the town treasurer shall determine to be most opportune for the town. If refunding bonds are sold in a negotiated underwriting, the first selectman and the town treasurer shall approve and designate the underwriter. Each series of refunding bonds shall mature in such amounts and on such date or dates shall be determined by the first selectman and the town treasurer in accordance with the provisions of the Connecticut General Statutes as amended. The refunding bond shall bear interest payments at such a rate or rates, including taxable rates, as shall be determined by the first selectman and the town treasurer. The issuance of refunding bonds, the interest on which is included in gross income for federal income tax purposes, is determined to be in the public interest. Refunding bond shall be executed in the name and on behalf of the town by the manual or facsimile signatures of the first selectman and the town treasurer, bear the town seal or a facsimile thereof, and be approved as to their legality by Robinson & Cole LLP Bond Counsel. Refunding bond shall be general obligations of the town, and each of the refunding bonds shall recite that every requirement of law relating to its issue has been duly complied with, that such bond is within every debt and other limit prescribed by law, and that the full faith and credit of the town are pledged to the payments of the principal thereof and the interest thereon. The aggregate denominations, form details, and other particulars thereof, including the terms of any rights of redemption and redemption prices, the designation of the certifying, paying, registrar, and transfer agent shall be subject to the approval of the first selectman and the town treasurer. The net proceeds of the sale of the refunding bonds after payment of underwriters, discount and other costs of issuance shall be deposited in an irrevocable escrow account in the amount sufficient to pay the principal of interest and redemption premium, if any, due on the refunded bonds to maturity or earlier redemption pursuant to the plan of refunding. The first selectman and the town treasurer are authorized to appoint an escrow agent and necessary and other professionals, and to execute and deliver any and all escrow, investment related agreements necessary to provide for such payments on the refunded bonds, and to provide for the transactions completed hereby. The first selectman and town treasurer are authorized to prepare and distribute preliminary and final official statements of the town for use in connection with the offering and sale of the refunding bonds, and they are hereby authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the town a bond purchase agreement, continuing disclosure agreement, and tax regulatory agreement, and such other documents necessary or desirable for the issuance of the refunding bonds and the payment of refunded bonds. Section 2, the resolution shall be effective until July 1, 2021, which is probably about 5 minutes from now with the length of that resolution.
Second.
Who seconded that? Laura?
I seconded it. I think Dan may have too.
Oh, Dan, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you remember, I did ask if there was a short version, but Kevin was very excited about his 10 minutes.
No, I wasn't. I got all the big words right, like aggregate and all those other big words.
There's a lot of syllables there,
Yeah.
Kevin. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else to add? Are there any other questions? I will unmute our Echo friend.
We're unmuted.
I'm all set.
Terrific. And you're not echoing. Yes, you are.
Okay.
Never mind. You are. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Anna, thanks again. Once again, you put a lot of work into these kind of things, and this is the first time we've done this. I appreciate it very much. If I stay in order now, I'll go to 3D, and I will unmute a good friend of mine, Michael Mines, a good friend of the town, who is the behind the scenes guy of our web page. And he's just a volunteer. He's on the cable TV advisory board. But this grant, maybe Mike, could you give us like a minute's worth of what this grant's all about and how we got it?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. Welcome, Mike.
The cable subscribers all pay a 0.25% fee on their bill every month, and that goes into the PEG-PISHA fund to buy capital equipment for education, governments, community access studios. This was done after the state took the capability of cable TV franchising away from the local municipalities and put it at the state level. And the state got all the money. They said, well, we need to have some money to buy capital equipment. So they put this in place. Now, for the last few years, the legislature has been confiscating this money and putting it in the general fund. But myself and a lot of other people involved in cable TV advisory councils and community access studios around the state have been lobbying hard. And Senator Formica helped us a lot with this to get it reinstated, and it was reinstated this year. And they opened the grant program, and we put in a grant request to get new equipment for Town Hall and for the dispatch center, with the idea that that would be put into the new public safety building when it moved. And part of the requirement to get the grant, now that we've been told we're eligible, part of the thing is to have this service agreement with the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority to say we're going to follow the rules to purchase the equipment and have it installed.
That's wonderful, Mike. It took a little bit, it took a lot of work to get this grant done correctly and properly and in on time. And there was a whole lot of applications that went in, and ours rose to the top. I really appreciate the work you and Carmen did in putting this together.
I'll just say too that Bill gave us some good advice.
And Bill Shear always gives good advice. He's been giving me advice during this whole meeting. Thanks, Bill. I will add that this is going to help us as we move our cable television operation. The guts of it, as you know, is over at Dispatch now. And they control all the switches, and that's where it beams out. We have to move it to the new public safety building when Dispatch moves over. That's an added cost into the project. But also we should be able to upgrade the audiovisual system at the town hall. Mike, there's microphones and cameras and all sorts of things involved with this, right?
Yeah, the current system is the old NTSC standard, and the new hardware will be all on the digital standard. Now, it won't be high definition. The cable companies are not required to provide high definition for publication, educational and government TV, but it will be the same resolution as like C-SPAN is if you watch C-SPAN on cable.
Okay. All right. That's probably.
Now, the added thing that we were able to do, because some of the equipment has multiple capabilities, we're going to be able to do live stream to YouTube with this also.
Correct.
For no additional cost.
And we also have some remote microphones that will be able to be used.
Yeah, wireless microphone, so people at the table like Anna won't have to share a microphone.
not only that, but we also get presentations a lot with people up at the board. I know, and especially our land use commissions. We've all been ex officios over there, and people have the tripods, and they're walking around the room because they're making a presentation on the site plan or whatever. Now there'll be a microphone so they can be captured.
Yeah, and there'll also be a plug to put into their USB slot on their PC so they can wirelessly project to the projector.
Wonderful. Thank you, and thank you for all the work you did in getting us qualified for this this grant. $85,000 is wonderful. Thank you, Mike. Is there a motion? Or yeah, let's have a motion and then questions.
I'll move to authorize the first selectman to execute the public educational and governmental program and educational technology investment account grant in the amount of $85,307.44.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any further comments? Are there any questions? Roseanne, you're on mute.
I'm all set.
Okay.
No, this is good news. Thank you, Mike. We've been talking about this for years, so
Yeah,
time's come.
It's been on my whiteboard in my office from the first 6 years ago. We wanted to upgrade the audio system mostly. The move to the public safety building gave us the motivation and ability to go out and get this grant and upgrade the town hall audiovisual system, which is sorely needed for the people at home who try to watch these meetings. Been very difficult over the years. So thank you.
Well, it sounds like perfect timing and great work.
Thanks, Dan. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 You need to unmute Roseanne.
Oh, I will. We want to get that. We want to get that on record. Roseanne,
Yes.
was that an aye from you?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Mark, for reminding. So that's a 6-0 vote. I appreciate that, and the grant's wonderful. Thanks again, Mike, and to Carmen if she's observing. The next is authorize emergency expenditures due to the pandemic. Anna,
Mark, on my list of draft motions is a 3D one for an appropriation of this and putting it into a CNRE fund.
Go
I
ahead.
have moved to
Yes.
appropriate the public educational and governmental programming and educational technology investment account grant in the amount of $85,307.44 in the CNRE Fund 32, for which corresponding revenue and expenditure accounts will be established, titled PEG PCA grant, and forward to the Board of Finance for approval.
Second.
Terrific. Motion's been made and seconded. Any comments? Unmuted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Wonderful. Can I move on, Kevin?
I guess so.
Authorize emergency expenditures due to the pandemic. Anna, your hand is up, first of all.
You can take it down.
Okay. But could you guide us through some of the emergency expenditures that you'd like authorized tonight?
Okay, well, there were three. And so on the top there of the agenda item is a summary of the item, and then under action needed, so they're like numbered the same. So the first one has to do with Executive Order 7-P, which is to make provisions for housing accommodations for first responders and healthcare workers. And what this has to do with is if they are exposed to COVID-19 and they do not want to go home and possibly infect their family members, per this executive order, we have to provide them with hotel accommodations. So the Emergency Management Department has reached out to 5 in-town establishments and 2 out-of-town establishments, and they provided us with daily and weekly rates, and they range from $50 to $80 per night, and the weekly rates range from $299 per week to $574 per week. So when I did the most recent month-end review of our current budget, I determined that there is and will be an available balance in the health insurance budget account of $50,000. So I thought this was a good area to, like, if you will, reallocate the use of those funds for this purpose, should it be necessary. And my recommendation would be to just authorize us to use up to that $50,000 limit. We did have to fill out a Certificate 123 and submit it to the state, because any of these establishments that get used for this particular purpose under this executive order, they will not be, you know, will not have to pay the state taxes on the room rates.
Keep in mind, this is a requirement, and it's a good one too. Many of our first responders, if they've been exposed, do not want to go home and infect their families. Very important. So we're taking these one at a time. Anna, is that what we're doing?
Well, I just thought it would be easier to
Okay.
view them each one at a time and
Okay.
then do the motion for them. But that's
Okay, I'll move to authorize the use of up to $50,000 available in account 01-01-114-100-127 Health Dental Care for the purpose of State of Connecticut Executive Order 7-B for housing related expenditures for first responders and healthcare workers, and forward to the Board of Finance for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further comments from anyone? I thought.
Well deserved and well needed for these people who are on the front lines.
Yeah, very important thing. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? We'll go to the next one.
okay. So the next one has to the dispatch department. We're looking for additional funds for both the overtime and the part-time dispatcher account. This has been a department that we've really struggled with all year. With the use of the part-timers, like every week they're the open shifts are posted, and some weeks we do well, meaning we get many of the shifts filled, and then other weeks, because of the unavailability of the part-time dispatchers, we need to do overtime shifts with our full-timers. So that really ramps up the overtime. So we've been doing all year, we've actually been doing transfers from the part-time account, you know, to fund the overtime account. And we've just run out of that option at this point in time. Again, when I reviewed the budget at the end of last month in the police department, the part-time clerical support they have in that department has been on leave of absence, doing a special job for the state of Connecticut. So there was about $11,000, you know, that I identified available in that account. So I discussed it with Chief Finkelstein, and he's agreeable to using that $11,000 to assist in subsidizing the dispatch overtime and part-time dispatcher account. And then the remaining portion would need to come from the contingency account, which is $10,340 for the overtime, and then $8,525 for the dispatch. I reviewed with Sergeant Masick what their weekly needs have been in each of the accounts, and that's how we came up with the estimate for the overtime being $775 a week, and the part-time account being about $1,940 per week for the rest of the year.
Motion.
I'll move to approve a transfer in the amount of $11,000 from account 01-25-216-100-412 part-time clerical police to account 01-25-215-100-214 dispatch OT, and transfer $18,865 from account 01-01-120-200-500 contingency as follows: $1,525 to 01-25-215-100-213 part-time dispatchers, and $10,340 to 01-25-215-100-214 dispatch OT, and forward to the Board of Finance for approval.
You are unmuted.
Are there any questions?
We need a second. I'll second.
Are there any other questions?
Is the $11,000, is that in there, Anna? In the operating contingency, I see the operating contingency with a balance of 135,000.
It's not recorded in that history of the operating contingency account because the $11,000 is not coming from the contingency account. It's actually a transfer from the police department budget.
Okay, so is that the right number, the 135 that'll be available, or will there be 11,000?
No, the $11,000 for part of this transfer is not coming from the contingency account. It's coming from
Okay,
another department's budget.
so that's been accounted for. Okay,
Yes, absolutely.
okay, thank you.
You are
Any other-
unmuted.
Any other questions or comments?
Well,
Yeah,
now
just-
I'm confused. Where did the contingency fund come in?
It really isn't the, wait a minute.
So, okay, so for this particular transfer, there are two sources of funds. One source of funds is $11,000, which is coming from the police department. And the remaining portion of the request, $18,865, is coming from the contingency account.
You are unmuted.
Okay, I'm set.
So the net amount to cover the rest of the year is 29,000 change.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Roseanne, are you on your computer and your telephone?
No, I'm just on the cell. No, I'm on the landline. I thought I'd get better reception with the landline. But I can
Ma'am?
switch. I can call back in on my cell phone.
I just don't.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
Are you on speakerphone, Roseanne?
No.
Okay.
For the life of me, I can't figure out why you're on a telephone and it's echoing like this.
I don't know. Was it even from the beginning? Was it echoing?
It didn't seem to be at the very beginning.
I don't know what happened. I'm afraid to switch to. I've got another landline phone, but I'm afraid to switch. I'll be shut off. But I can hang up and call back on the cell phone.
It's okay. I just have to keep muting you and
Are
I know,
we on
it's
channel
aggravating.
22 or anything like that?
no. It's being recorded and it's available live for people to chime in, and it will be recorded and will be posted later. So I'm going to take the vote. We have a motion, right? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. The third one.
So the third one has to do with the Niantic Fire Department, and he recently did an analysis of his account, and he's requesting some additional funding for the part-time firefighter account. However, he's a little anxious. I guess we're going to be starting the work on the Niantic River Bridge replacement, and he's concerned that he may need some additional funding depending on how many shifts they're going to need to use for that particular project. But the source of funds for this transfer is the contingency account.
I thought any extra shifts he's got to put on for the Niantic Bridge project would come out of the contractor's fees. Isn't that in the project? We're not required.
You're right, it should. So I will, I'll make
I know he's concerned with that, and that has been a topic of conversation, and I've been meeting with
You're
DOT. I met with him yesterday with Joe, and that is an ongoing discussion, but anything that they're requiring of us they have to pay for, anything that's extra, obviously.
Okay.
So I want to clear that up first. So we have is there a motion that we can put on the table for discussion?
Move to approve a transfer in the amount of $8,220 from account 01-120-200-500 contingency to account 01-25-217-100-612 part-time firefighters, Niantic Fire Department, and forward to the Board of Finance for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further comments?
You are unmuted.
Any further comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Do it again. Next is 3F. That's SCARA. We are postponing. We're going to pull that from the meeting tonight and table that for another meeting. Joe, do you want to add? I thought I unmuted you. Wait a minute. Let's try that again. No, wait a minute. I don't know why it's not. There you go, Joe. No.
Nope. You just had it. You just toggled it. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. About 4 or 5 months ago, the Board of Selectmen approved the municipal service agreement for the solid waste. And the main thing is that we're changing the waste facility that we're going to. We're going from Preston, the one over by Mohegan Sun, to the one in Lisbon. At that time, we approved the municipal service agreement, but there was a second part contractually that all the 13 towns of SCARA have to do is an ordinance. The town of East Lyme has an ordinance, and basically we have to modify the ordinance to change the wording from Preston to Lisbon. So it's a pretty easy, straightforward wording. However, it's my understanding, talking to Attorney Edo, that because it's modification to any ordinance requires a public hearing. So what he had recommended is you guys set a public hearing either tonight or sometime soon. I have to have this done and signed and sealed, delivered by June. I thought it wasn't going to be an issue until we had a pandemic. So it's something that whether you schedule a public hearing now or wait a little bit, but I have to have this done by June, and that's coming up.
So we haven't figured out how to have a public hearing yet. Or we have. I guess we could just do it this way and allow the public to speak. And now that we've gone through this process, we'll be more comfortable in doing it in the future. Or we'll be back at the town hall in June. And that's, so we're going to put this off to as late as possible and have a public hearing on really a very small amendment to the SCARA ordinance, which is we're taking our trash to a different plant. We're going from Preston to Lisbon. And that's essentially what we need to do. That's the work that we'll need to do with the SCARA item. But we have time to put it off, so we're going to do just that. Thank you, Joe.
Yep, thanks.
All right. Ex officio reports, I can't imagine, but if you all want to chime in and let us know how you're doing and anything that you'd like to report, anything you see in town, anything you hear, we can start with Mr. Salerno.
I have a building commission meeting tomorrow on Zoom, so I'll let you know how that goes. And was there any, the POCD, is there any relief on that from the governor's office? Or has there been no mention of that?
I think they did get a 3-month push on that.
3 months?
I think I read a 3-month push on that. I think Gary knows about that.
Okay. Okay, then Gary knows. So good.
But I think this is a quiet time for them to get busy. So he'd asked about making the town's Zoom program available to POCD members to have some chats about putting it together, because there's still a lot of work to do. So I would encourage them to do that.
Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Mark. Hope the family's well.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Siri, you're next to my line, so it's like the Brady Bunch here. I guess that
no, obviously Parks and Rec haven't met stuff regarding the parks. And the boardwalk, you've done a great job of keeping people informed about their availability and the parks and the track and so forth like that. And just encourage everyone in town to support our restaurants and businesses that are open because could use our support right now. That's it.
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Daigle is here. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. The only thing I'd like to report is that we have established a new bid due date for the public safety building. And Mark, hopefully I don't have this wrong, but you can correct me. It's April 24th, Friday.
It sounds right. I got stacks of papers and just absolutely no organization here because I'm not at my desk and don't have my files and all. So yes, we did establish a date. It was at the almost at the end of April, and we put that notice out, and we are encouraged that some projects in the state who have kept their bid dates have received some very favorable rates from the contractors. Where the economy was booming prior, now we're seeing an opportunity for maybe us getting a good rate from a contractor. We'll see. We'll soon see. We'll see in a couple of weeks.
And I'd like to echo Kevin's words for supporting our town businesses and restaurants. And once again, a great thank you to the emergency response folks and then all the medical personnel who are in town who are serving all of southeastern Connecticut as we fight this pandemic. So Thank you to all of you.
Yeah, tough stuff. Thank you, Paul. I'm glad you're healthy. I'm glad you're well. Dan, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for asking. Not much in the way of ex officio reports,
right.
Unfortunately. But again, I would just say that I think we've really pulled together as a small town and manage this as best we can. And I want to thank you, Mark, for all your efforts. It's been a lot on your plate, I'm sure. So
hang in there. Thank you for your kind words. It's nobody signed up for this one, that's for sure, and nobody wants to be going through this. And we all of us here want everyone to be healthy, and we just do everything we can to make that happen. So, thank you, Dan. Roseanne, I'll unmute you. How are you,
Okay.
Roseanne?
I'm doing well, thanks. The Commission on Aging has been able to carry on with the Meals on Wheels program, so that's a big help to people who can't get out. They've done very well and haven't missed a day, so that's good news for many people. They've also managed to continue some transportation for people who, the few people that are having to go out for medical appointments, but that number has decreased markedly. So they're doing well. I see Kathy frequently. She's right on the front lines, delivering the meals herself in many cases. Zoning hasn't, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't done anything, and neither has Commission of Natural Resources. So I think as I'm driving around town, as many of us are, I'm staying in the car, but I see a lot of people that are trying to be healthy and out walking, the majority of them with masks or face coverings. And likewise, a few of the businesses that I've had to go into, the pharmacy, the grocery stores, they seem to be dealing well with it and taking extra precautions. So I think under the circumstances, I think as a town, I think we're doing well, and let's just hope we can keep up the pace.
I agree. And I'm going to mute you because you're going to feed back. I appreciate your observations, Mrs. Hardy. I'm sure you've never seen anything like this before. We're doing well as a town. I think the message is out there, and it's the kind of community we have. Right away, I got calls and emails about how can I volunteer, how can I make a difference, and there are people out there doing that. I think there's also a little edge to our town. I mean, there's people that love to jump on to social media and poke the bear a little bit, and or maybe walk the opposite direction on the boardwalk just to rile people up. And I've seen it. I don't get it. I've seen it. But I think for the most part, we've seen a community come together. We've seen it before. We saw it with, Maddie, the Maddie signs, and the young girl who passed away since, and this community come together. We've seen it so many other times with hurricanes and storms and tragedies and celebrations in our town. And this is one of those moments. So I thank you all for your leadership and your partnership in this. I've reached out to every one of you and had conversations and discussions about this, and I support us doing that more often. There was an article today in the paper, Mary's here listening in, about UPSU and our contract with our town hall employees. I think we had that discussion before, but we reached a very good balanced agreement with our UPSU employees. The problem with that group is it's a wall-to-wall. We have public works directors, but we also have town hall workers, and where some might be considered essential or their tasks are essential, some aren't. And a month or 6 weeks ago when we were putting this together, and the reports were 1 in 5 of us were going to get this, and 1 in 5 of those are going to die. We really wanted to make sure we did the right thing by getting people away from each other, thinning the workload at the town hall and in other spots, and we've done that. And we've kept, for the most part, it's been a few scares, but for the most part, we've been able to keep our people safe. And ultimately, that's the job, is keeping our people safe. Our citizens, but of course our family of employees. So we reached a good agreement, and they and that made a little bit of news. It was on Channel 8 today as well. I echo what Mr. Dago said. Our first responders have been amazing. They're doing what they can do with very little. Our PPE supply in southeastern Connecticut and eastern Connecticut mirrors that of everywhere else in the world. It's no different. Nobody could expect that we need that many masks for this 90-day period, and we're doing the best we can. I was on a conference call with the Visiting Nurses Association, their union, last week, who were pleading to some of the first selectmen and mayors on the call for help. But meanwhile, I'm trying to help our own people, and it's bad all over. And now the government's coming out and saying everybody should wear a mask everywhere. And I think that's become a requirement in New Haven. Someone told me that before the meeting tonight. I have a mask, but if I didn't, I wouldn't know where to get one other than go up and try to find a handkerchief in fashion one. But that's, listen, we're at the peak of this now. If you saw the graphs, the curve is pretty flat in southeastern Connecticut. The hospitals have been able to handle the volume of patients. That's still happening. That's not ending yet. We have a long way to go, but I hope when the governor decides to turn things back on, he considers where the flat curve was, and it certainly was here in southeastern Connecticut. I'm hoping if our citizens can come together and continue to social distance and do all the right things, and we can knock down the cases, I'm hoping that we'll be back in business, sooner than other places that have seen great tragedy, and we witnessed that on TV. So I started by saying thank you to first responders. They've been amazing. Mike Finkelstein is our emergency management director. That used to be the job of first selectman, and Dick Morris held on to that for many, many years as well. Listen, Mike's doing an incredible job. I've sat in this seat, in this position, with this view for 7 of the 8 hours today. There's just meetings on top of meetings all the time for different things. And Mike's in on every one of them. He's doing an amazing job for our town. Other commissions, I'm going to encourage them to get back to work as needed. Many of you talked about your ex officio duties, that the boards aren't meeting. I'm asking only things that have a timeline to them to meet in April, but come May that they can start getting onto their regular schedule and start playing with this Zoom thing a little bit. But there is a responsibility when we have these Zoom meetings, and it's not easy, as you can see. As we're getting feedback from Roseanne, and we had to mute the people that aren't on the board, and we have to record the meeting and then post the meeting. So there's many, many requirements to these meetings, as we can't do it publicly. But we'll be working with the commission chairs to go ahead and have some meetings going forward. And there are applications coming in the land use. I was told there's 20 permits, building permits that came in by application this week. So people are out planning their decks and their sunrooms and such, and investing in our economy. And that's probably a really good thing. And they have some time on their hands. So that's good too. As you know, we made the boardwalk one way. That was a desperate plea. Before we had to close it, we saw our neighbors to the east, Waterford, close every facility in town, the high school track and the fields, and their walking trails and their parks, and we wanted to, in their beaches, and we wanted to not do that. We'd like to keep our parks and our beaches and our hiking trails and our boardwalk open, but we wanted to do it safely, and we wanted to, there's that balance, right? I'm more of a libertarian than anything. I think government should stay out of this, and we should have personal responsibility, but we also, I know there's a balance there, right? So making the boardwalk one way has seen favorable results. People feel a little bit safer to get out there. But I encourage everybody, if it's not safe for you to be around other people, meaning you have a compromised system, or you're older, or you can't make the 2.5 miles of boardwalk loop, don't go on it. Go somewhere else. We have a nice walking trail out at Bridebrook. We have the high school track. I go by that a couple times a day, and there's not many people on it. And there's many, 6 lanes. So you pick a lane and stay by yourself and do your walking and get outside. The weather will turn warmer, they say. I don't know. It's been stuck in the 50s for a whole long time. But as the weather gets warmer, people are going to want to be outside, but we need to encourage this social distancing. I don't need to parrot what everyone else is saying on TV, but we need to also make sure that that's the case here in this town. There is a concern about the beaches. I think we'll have to reach that when we reach it. There's a big concern about the beaches, about, those beaches getting packed. And if it's a nice warm day in the middle of May, and that day's going to come, it comes every year. We get that one blast of a warm day or two. And heck, everybody's out. The kids are out of school and all that. Everybody's going to want to head down to the beach. And we got to discourage that from being overloaded. We're working through that. And I've talked to the first selectman at Old Lyme, who shares the same concern. Obviously, we're going to mirror the state's plan. Governor Lamont is very opposed to closing the parks, but he is very concerned that these parks are getting overrun, especially on a warm weekend day. And I've heard rumors of plans of closing parking lots and letting the people that live near the parks walk to the parks. I'm not sure that's going to work. I'm not sure that works at all in our town. So we'll come up with something. And by all means, you know how to reach me, Selectmen. If you want to do a one-on-one and give me an idea or two, by all means, we'll do that. That's really all I have. I thank you for your friendship, for your partnership, and for your support. This is a grateful town that is grateful for what we do. The budget. I told you I would talk about it. We are preparing opportunities for cuts for the Board of Finance. I don't know if I want to put it that way. We will be cutting the Board of our budget that went to the Board of Finance. We have some opportunities for some more cuts. It didn't make the agenda. I meant it to make the agenda. Perhaps I'll have a special meeting next week just to go over some of those cuts. If you don't mind, maybe we'll put that together, just talk about that, and we can talk about that rather than it just coming from me, give you an opportunity to chime in as well. That's all I have tonight. Is there anything else?
Well, as we have some of our suggestions that I know some of us have been going back over the budget again and thinking about some of our original decisions. Should we call you individually and put forward those suggestions and then you make up a list?
Yes, thank you for, and we had talked earlier about this again. I'm sorry it's not on the agenda. We had a lot of things we were scrambling to put on the agenda, and then it's very difficult not being at town hall doing this and communicating properly. But we have been working on that already, but I'd be interested in any cuts that you see that are obvious. Send me an email. That way I'll have some documentation, or you may call me. And we will.
And then perhaps before our next meeting, a list could go out of some suggestions so that we had a chance to.
I could push out what Anna and I have been working on. The next Board of Selectmen meeting, we are in that period of time of the year where it's actually in 3 weeks. It's in May 6th, and I will want to get it to the Board of Finance before then. So maybe we'll schedule a meeting middle of next week.
I think a special meeting would be in order, and if we could have a list, maybe a day before, we could see if we've got some common ground.
I have an altered amended list prepared, so I can push that out tomorrow, and we can schedule a meeting next week sometime.
Okay, good.
That sounds good. Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, is there any,
Don't get used to muting me.
I'm just about to hit the button. Bye-bye.
Hey, Mark, is there any, do we have any idea or indication of what our state funding levels will be next year with I'm sure the state's going to be reeling.
The state has been hit hard, sales tax issues, revenue, all over, the Pequot Fund, obviously with the casinos being closed, it will take a significant hit. Yet a lot of their losses supposedly will be covered by some of the some government funding and FEMA and disaster relief. So I don't think the state knows. We're going to assume we're going to be properly funded until we hear otherwise. And we'll see where that goes. There has been a commitment to fund municipalities. They know where we're at as well. So we'll see where that goes. And that's why we're putting off the budget season for as long as possible. We're hoping the legislature can get back into Hartford, and then the news will be coming out again about what they're thinking. Because right now it's just crickets.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. I did tell people that were on the call that there was a chat feature, and I've been working on the side here trying to find it, and I guess we have to set it up before we set up the meeting. And so I apologize. There was no chat feature this evening. I think we'll be able to, but there is reactions, and Fred gives us a thumbs up, or not. I don't know. He gave something a thumbs up, so I appreciate that. Fred, there are reactions, but there are no chat features. So but I do feel comfortable that the next meeting we could put on a public comment because we get to the end of this meeting, and it would be nice to hear from the citizens. So the next time we have a meeting, I will add that to the agenda. Okay. Anything else for the meeting tonight?
We set up an executive session.
Yes, so we can, well, that's right. So I guess we go to executive session and then adjourn, then we come back to the regular meeting. Thank you, Paul.
Move to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing legal matters. Do we need to include anybody, Mark?
No.
Okay.
Just 6.
Move to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing legal matters.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, so I'm going to ask everyone else to be removed